Pittsburgh and Carolina, one of 11 games in the National Hockey League tonight, and it is a big one. They're fighting for playoff position in the Metro Division. It's still early, but it's getting late. This is a game the Pittsburgh Penguins really need. Here to break that down is Dejan Kovacevic, managing editor of DK Pittsburgh Sports. DK, I haven't talked to you in ages. How you doing?
I haven't spoken with you either in a while. Happy New Year.
To you, too. And before we get started, I just want to say this. You know, I've had real trouble for weeks now finding peace and ease, comfort. I have not felt the same since the night Ryan Shazier had his injury. And every morning I get up, the first thing I do is run to the computer, hoping today's the day we finally get good news about the man, and it hasn't happened yet. So I just want to let you know there are Steeler fans up north of the border also that are praying for the guy and hoping at some point.
Well, I knew you would I knew you'd mention the Steelers early in this conversation, Boom, and I respect that. I was in Cincinnati. That happened right in front of me. It's a terrifying thing, not just for football, but for all organized sports. We saw what happened with Dana Lang, the young lady in the women's outdoor game in Boston. We don't know much about Ryan Shazier's status right now. We know what his family is telling us. We're not pushing. We're not prying. We're not monsters. We do want to know, though. We want to find out. And the hints that keep coming out from Vern Shazier, Ryan's father, have been at least encouraging. They're talking about rehabilitation. And, you know, we'll see. But I'm sure the thoughts of the entire sports world, I know, went toward that extraordinary young man, which I am not saying after the fact. This is somebody that I've written about in that tone for a long time. Really, really tough to see. But, yeah, there's something there for everybody.
Okay, let's get to the Penguins. And I got a lot of questions, DK, and I don't know where the answers come from, but I'll start with this. It is just amazing to me how much Pittsburgh struggles 5-on-5. They can cover some of it up with the power play, but I was going over the numbers yesterday. Sidney Crosby had an amazing year last year, 89 points, but 64 of those 89 points came at even strength, which is an amazing number. Through 41 games this year, he has 17 even strength points. Where did it all go, 5-on-5?
It all went into the fatigue factor.
Yeah.
They deny it passionately so, because every once in a while, like they did in Philadelphia a couple nights ago, they managed to find that energy and go out there and get it. But we saw this happen with the LA Kings. We saw it happen with the Chicago Blackhawks. There's nowhere to run and hide from the incredible volume of games that these guys have played, and in particular Sidney Crosby, because you factor in the World Cup, you factor in Sochi. He's never stopped playing high-stakes hockey for a span of about 3 years. There's not really anything that they're doing differently systematically. There's not anything differently that they're doing in terms of motivation. Their stars are tired, much more so Sid than Evgeny Malkin, who's got legs, but he's also had injuries that have cut him a break over the last couple of years. Same thing goes for Chris Letang, but Sid, there's nowhere to go from it. So it's the fatigue, but it's also that they lost some good players, depth guys. You know, Nick Bonino, Matt Cullen, Trevor Daley. These were Chris Kunitz, real impact supporting cast guys that have not been adequately replaced, at least not to what the Penguins had hoped on those bottom six. So you put those two things together and you're going to have a 5-on-5 problem.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch most nights. Speaking of amazing, I was amazed the other night when I found out that Mike Sullivan had made a decision in an interstate game against the Philadelphia Flyers, a game they needed to win and did win, when he announced they were starting Tristan Jarry. I kind of couldn't believe it happened. Certainly looks like it was the right decision. But how surprised were you by it, and what did we learn from that?
A little bit surprised, not so much in the sense that Matt Murray hasn't really been himself all season. And there's another one that's really hard to pinpoint, harder because he's so young, so you're not going to be talking about fatigue. He's had a couple of injuries, one of them significant, obviously, when Jakub Voracek crashed into the goalpost and took Murray's leg with it. It's a strange thing. Goalies will go into slumps. There's speculation, at least around here, that maybe Murray got rid of the wrong goaltending coach when, after the season and after Marc-Andre Fleury was gone. It was Murray's decision to go with Mike Buckley, who is in the minor league system for the Penguins, and of course Mike Bales, the parent goaltending coach, ended up being snapped up by the Carolina Hurricanes. But you're looking at a situation here where Mike Sullivan has to say, look, we're done celebrating last year's Cup or the years before Cup, and I have to go with the guys that are doing the best. When you see Tristan Jarry in the net right now, he looks like a faster, fresher, more aggressive, more energetic goaltender. And, coaches are not going to ignore that for very long.
Well, it's still amazing because Murray just looked so bulletproof through those last two playoff runs, but maybe there's more pressure being the number one guy. All of this leads us to the ultimate question, the million-dollar question with the Penguins. We know Jim Rutherford is a general manager. His track record, he doesn't watch the paint dry. He's made small deals so far. Mm-hmm. What is your sense on his willingness to make the big deal, whatever that deal might be?
I wouldn't even call it willingness, Boom. I'd say it's eagerness.
Yeah.
I think he's wanted to do it since August. But they have been frustrated at different points by what's available on the market. That's what I hear from them more than anything. They don't feel like what they're looking for has popped up into their shopping aisle yet. When it has, this is a team that's $700,000 shy of bumping its head on the salary cap. That means that in order to make a deal, you can't just, shuffle a couple of bodies around. You've got to make sure that the money makes sense too. So that complicates things further. Their greatest need, obviously, and has been all along, is a third-line center. Tonight, against the Hurricanes, they're going to go back to trying Jake Gensel at center. That's something that they tried one night in a game I covered out in Vancouver, and it went okay. Gensel scored 2 goals, though they were both on the power play, so it didn't say that much about his even strength ability. He's played some center. He did so in college. But you're talking about a little guy being a third-line Eastern Conference center. That's asking a lot of him. It's not a long-term solution, no matter how well this goes tonight. So that's the greatest need. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for a third-line center, and I believe that they would be willing to move one of their overflow, really, of highly skilled but smaller wingers, because they just have too much of that.
Is there any merit to the Chris Letang conversation?
None.
None.
I mean, he has been technically available in the sense that he is not untouchable. But there hasn't been something in the sense that there have been, like, hard discussions. You see the difference there? I mean, I know that sounds like semantics to some people, but when people call and ask about different players, the only ones that are always completely off limits are Sid and Gino.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it surprised me when I heard it. And before we let you go, let me ask you, the recent spate of injuries that they're dealing with, how does that impact the roster in the short term, including tonight? And who would you like to see step up? Are we looking for Simone or are we looking for Sprong?
Out of the kids who have come up, I mean, those are the ones that you want to count on. Matt Hunwick is going to be back in the lineup tonight because Brian Dumoulin has a concussion, although that was downplayed pretty significantly today, as much as you can with something like a concussion. So it doesn't sound like Dumo will be out for very long. Carter Rowney's going to be out for a long time, and that's the reason that Jake Gensel will be moving into that slot. I neglected to mention that. Who needs to step up, Boom, is Sid. I mean, I'm tired of analyzing this excessively. He is the world's best player as of the past 2-3 years. I don't think anybody can dispute that. And he has to somehow find another gear, whether that's physical, mental. It's hard to say. We're not him. We're not inside his brain. We're not inside how he feels when he's trying to do his cuts. One of the things that I was talking about with some of my staff when we were discussing this amongst ourselves, in Pittsburgh, we remember how Mario Lemieux had multiple gears. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
he would find a way to slow the game down when he wanted to slow it down. He would find a way to play it at a high pace when he wanted to play it at a high pace. Sid's a one-speed guy. Sid's a warp speed guy who is making hard cuts and turns and grinding out the puck down low in the offensive zone to create his 5-on-5 offense. And if you're not at 101%, for that sort of thing, it's going to show a lot more than it would have with different types of superstars like the ones we've had here in Pittsburgh. So somehow he's got to figure it out. He's the one that's got to find it. But that's the player that needs to step up.
Yeah, but in wrapping up, I mean, it goes back to the start of our conversation. 49 playoff games in 2 years is just a lot. Sometimes you just can't go back to the well. So we'll see if he can pull it off. By the way, before you go, I did want to.
You want to hear an amazing number in that regard? Yep. 2.5 seasons. The Penguins have averaged as a hockey team a 0.1 days, including. Think about that.
Yeah. Okay, you buzzed out there, but I do want to thank you for the time. It's getting to crunch time early for the Penguins. The standings say they're fine, but they got to win games and got to win them now, and tonight's an important one. DK, thank you very much for the time. Always appreciate it.
Thank you, Boom. Appreciate it. Happy New Year.